want to show you some things on why he truly wanted to kill this baby. And we think sometimes we've kind of figured it out, but I think there's more to the story than what we really know. Tonight in Matthew chapter 2, I asked the question, why kill the baby? If you want to destroy the king, if you want to destroy the possibilities of this king being born and everything, it's interesting that he would have such fear of a baby. Why do you fear a baby so much that you feel like you have to kill this baby? And that's what Herod wanted to do. And so there has to be something about this baby that was so powerful that a king over all of Israel would want to kill. How a baby is not intimidating. A baby is nothing that anybody is afraid of. But yet we've got a man here that's the most powerful man in all of Israel. And yet he feels like he has to kill a baby to be able to survive. And we notice that he tells us that the scriptures tell us that he wanted to kill this young child named Jesus. In verse 1 of chapter 2 of Matthew, verse 1, now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privately called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star, which they saw in the east, went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. When they would come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. Now notice this last statement. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Why would Herod be so afraid of this young child that he would want to literally destroy this young baby? I call him a baby. Obviously, Jesus at this time must have been up into somewhere between 1 and 2 years of age. But why would such a small little child be so intimidated, be so fearful of that the king would want to search out the land and kill this baby? Surely a man of his stature, surely a man so powerful as Herod, that controlled all of Israel, he was set up under the authority of the Roman Empire, the most powerful Roman Empire on earth, the most powerful empire that controlled that whole area of the world. Nobody stood against Rome. And here's the king that was put in position by Rome. Nobody would come against Israel because Rome controlled Israel. And this king was under the power of Rome, and yet he's so fearful of a baby that was born in Bethlehem. What was it that frightened him so much that he wanted to know where this baby was, as God said in verse 13? He wanted to know where he was so that he could go destroy him. That's an amazing thing to me when I stop and think that a king that ruled over a country that had the backing of the entire Roman Empire was frightened of a little child. And he was so scared that he wanted to kill this baby. And so I asked this question: why kill the baby? What was it about this baby that made him so scared? And I want to just share with you some things of the scriptures here that Herod must have known about. Herod was not a stupid man. He was a powerful man. And he surrounded himself with the Levite priest. And they knew all the laws. They knew the Old Testament. They knew all the prophecies. They knew all of these things. And he surrounded himself by the Pharisees. He surrounded himself by the Sadducees. He surrounded himself by all the Levite priests. He knew what was going on, and he knew the scriptures. And he is so scared, he must have been told all these things. This is, he knew. He knew. He said, where was the baby born? He knew the scriptures that there was something about that baby that frightened him. And I want to share with you some of the things that he probably knew all about, because it's right there in the writings of the prophets that he would have known about. The first thing I want to share with you is right here in Matthew chapter 2, verse 2. In verse 2 it says, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? I call this the prophecy of the king. The prophecy of the king. The one thing that Herod knew was that they were proclaiming, all of his people, all of his Levites, all of his Pharisees, everybody that surrounded Herod was telling him this child that was born over there in Bethlehem, that child is prophesied as King of the Jews. And that frightened Herod. Herod was afraid of a king that was going to be more powerful than him. That's right. Herod was more afraid of this child because he was proclaimed King of the Jews. And if the one thing that Herod did not need a king in that area that the people would follow instead of following him. Right. Herod demanded that the people would follow him. Herod wanted the people to follow him. And yet he finds out there is a king that is born that will rule over all of Israel. And Herod was not going to rule over Israel. Herod was at that time. Herod was the king over all of Israel. But yet now he finds out that this baby is born as King of the Jews. That meant all the Jews were going to follow him. All the Jews were going to to line up behind this king and not Herod. And that was scary to Herod. Herod did not want competition, and he did not want a king in which all the people would follow and they would not follow him. If they didn't follow Herod, then Herod was going to be in trouble. Herod was going to have difficulty with Rome, and that's what he was afraid of. The people wanted this king rather than Herod, and if that was the case, he was going to lose control over Israel. He was going to lose control over the people. The people wanted a great king, and they were not getting it in Herod. The people were wanting a loving king, and they were not getting it in Herod. The people wanted a great leader, and they were not getting it by Herod. And so Herod realized that all of these people were gravitating toward him, and they were not. And they were that all the people were gravitating toward the baby. Everybody was looking toward the king of the Jews rather than the king that was placed by the Roman Empire. And so we have here, I think, one of the very first things that caused Herod to want to get rid of this child was the fact that he was already proclaimed as king of the Jews. That everybody was talking about the fact that he was going to be the king. Jesus was going to be the king. Jesus was the one that everybody was going to follow. And if that was the case, then Herod was going to lose control. And if Herod lost control over Israel, then what was going to happen was the fact that Herod would be taken out of that position. Rome would remove him from office, and chances are Rome would deal with him in a horrible and terrible way. And so that one of the things that he was frightened of, the reason he wanted to get rid of this baby, was that this baby, this child, was proclaimed the king while Herod sat on the throne as king. And no king wants to hear that there's another king coming in.
That's right.
And boy, I tell you, that was frightening to Herod, number one. There's something else that I want you to see. There's some things I want you to look at with me tonight to understand this. Go to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. I want you to look at this, if you would. Genesis chapter 12. And notice what happens here in verse 3. And this is something I want you to see with your eyes. Just look at it, exactly what God says here. I hear people quote this verse all the time. And most of the people quote it wrong. And so here it is right here in black and white. God said this, and I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse him that curses thee. Did you notice the difference in those two? The blessing and the curse? The blessing says, I will bless them. Them is a nation. Them is plural. Them is all the people of a nation. I will bless them that bless thee. In other words, it's talking about Israel. I'm going to bless any nation that blesses Israel. But notice what God said next. And I'm going to curse him that curses thee. God no longer, he doesn't curse a nation. He curses the individual person. He says, I will bless a nation if they bless Israel. But I'll curse the individual if he curses Israel. You see, and here's the thing that when I began to look at that, I began to realize that, you take, for instance, the United States. The United States has stood with Israel since day one. The United States has long, since the founding fathers established this nation, we were established on the fact that we were Christian and Jew, and that the Jews had a prominent place in the creation of this nation. In fact, when Washington was at almost the point of being defeated by the British, he was out of money, and he went to a man in New York City who was a Jew, and that Jew loaned Washington the money to outfit his army to fight the British. We are a country today because of the Jews that took up money and provided money to Washington to be able to fight against the British. This nation owes its founding on a bunch of Jews that provided money to be able to fight the British. And in turn, this nation has always stood with the Hebrews. This nation has always stood with Israel. And that's one of the things that I want you to understand, that this nation was blessed because of our stand for Israel. The nation was blessed. But an individual in this nation that is blessed, that has abundant food, that has abundant money, that has abundance in industry, this nation which is blessed by God, an individual could hate Israel. An individual could hate the Jews. And this nation will not be cursed because of an individual, but that individual is going to be cursed. And that's what God is saying here. I will bless the nation because it stands with Israel. But if an individual in that nation hates Judaism, if an individual in that nation hates the Jews, I will curse that individual and make sure that they pay the price for hating Israel. He says, I will bless the nation that blesses you, but I'll curse the individual that curses Israel. Now, why was that a prophecy that I call the prophecy of the curse? The prophecy of the curse. We have the prophecy of the king. We understand why the king wanted Jesus dead, because Jesus was proclaimed the king. But why what I call the prophecy of the curse? Because Herod knew this prophecy. Herod must have been told about all these things that it talked about. And you see, Herod understood. There's no doubt in my mind. He understood that he was a cursed man because he stood against Israel. He was a cursed man. Individually, he was a cursed man. Rome was cursed because they had enslaved Israel. And every nation that had ever enslaved Israel was cursed. Germany was cursed because of what they did to Israel. And every nation that has ever turned their back, that nation has been cursed. But Herod understood individually he had cursed Israel, and individually he was going to be cursed. And you see, the only hope he had was that he had to kill that baby. He had to get rid of that baby before that curse came upon him. And he was scared, and he wanted to get rid of Jesus before anything else happened. He wanted to get rid of him because he was the king. He wanted to get rid of him because he had the power to curse him. He had the power to curse Herod. And he wanted to get rid of Jesus Christ. The prophecy of the curse was another reason that he wanted to get rid of Jesus Christ. Hey, let me show you something else. In chapter 49 of Genesis. Chapter 49 of Genesis. Go over and take a look at this one. Here again, we're talking about what was it that Herod wanted why did he want to kill this baby Jesus? Look at Genesis 49 verse 10. I call this the prophecy of the scepter. We've got the prophecy of the king. We've got the prophecy of the curse. Now we've got the prophecy of the scepter. Notice this right here. It says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, his being the Jesus that is born, until Shiloh come, And that's Jesus right there. Shiloh being Messiah. And unto him, that's Jesus, shall the gathering of the people be. Now let me show you what that last statement says, that most people read it and they don't think anything, they don't understand it. That last statement said, and shall the gathering of the people be. In other words, there's a scepter coming to this king right here. And that says, the gathering of the people will be. Now, here's what it says. This is what it says in the Hebrew. That word gathering right there in the Hebrew is the word obedience. They gather because they're obedient to that one that's holding the scepter. The scepter means he's the king. That's what a king holds, is a scepter in his hand. And it says, they will be obedient to him. And now notice what it said right there. It said, the gathering of the people be. That word people be is a plural word in Hebrew. That's the good thing about a Hebrew word. It tells you whether it's talking about singular or plural. It tells you it's masculine or feminine. It tells you all about it. Gathering means obedient. People means everybody. The word, this last statement right there in Hebrew means all the people of the world will be obedient to him. And you see, that's what had to frighten Herod. That last statement said that all the people of the world are going to be obedient to him. That's what it means. And you see, that had to frighten Herod to realize that the entire world, it was prophesied that the entire world was going to be obedient to this king that was going to hold the scepter. The entire world was going to be obedient to him. The entire world was going to follow him. And you know what? That hasn't happened yet. But Herod, there's no doubt, Herod was absolutely sure that that was going to happen if he didn't get rid of that king. That the entire world was going to wind up following him. And he was frightened of that. He was scared. He realized that this king was unlike any other king, that it was prophesied, and his Levites told him, that his Pharisees told him, that his followers told him, that this king, it was prophesied in Genesis. This king was going to bring the entire world to follow him. And King Herod, if you don't get rid of this guy, if you don't kill this guy, the entire world will worship him. The entire world will follow him. And Herod knew that he had one choice, and that was to get rid of this baby. That's right. He had to get rid of this baby, because if he didn't, they wouldn't follow Herod. That's right. The entire world is going to follow Jesus Christ. Amen. And by the way, that hasn't happened yet, but when he comes back, they will. Amen. Every person on earth will bow down and worship him. But Herod thought that might happen right after. As soon as this baby is old enough to take charge, he was going to take charge of this world, and the people were going to follow him. And it must have frightened Herod. It must have scared Herod. And Herod wanted to get rid of this baby. Herod wanted to kill this baby. There's something else I want to share with you. Back in Matthew chapter 1. In Matthew chapter 1. Notice what it says in Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. In Matthew 1:23. Here I call this the prophecy of Emmanuel. The prophecy of Emmanuel. In verse 23, Matthew 1:23, it says, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. God with us. You see, here's one other thing. Here's one other thing that must have frightened Herod, one other thing that must have caused Herod to be so fearful that he needed to kill this baby was prophesied, is that he is God.
Amen.
He says that you will call his name Emmanuel, meaning God with us. You know what? Herod knew this. Herod was told this. This is God. This is not just any baby. This is God. He is God with us. He is Emmanuel. And Herod said, what does that mean? And they said, it's God. God's with us. And you see, and then somebody else came to Herod, one of his other Levites, and said, do you know what Isaiah said? Isaiah said that he will be called Wonderful. He will be called Counselor. And Herod says, I'm not scared of a wonderful king. That doesn't fear for me. And he said he's going to be called Counselor. And Herod said, I'm not scared of a counselor. I can take care of a counselor. And they said, but he's also called the Mighty God.
Amen.
Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God. Matthew said he is God with us. Isaiah said he is the mighty God. And all of a sudden, all of these prophecies are coming into Herod, and they're saying he's prophesied as God. He's going to be God. He was born as God. And all of a sudden, Herod became fearful that this baby was not just any baby. This baby was not just any king, but this baby was God. And you see, that had to frighten, that had to scare Herod. The prophecy of Emmanuel. You see, because he figured right then, I better kill this baby. Because if this baby lives, this baby will be number one, king. This baby will be able to curse me. This baby will hold the scepter that will gather all the people of the world behind him. And this baby will be God. This baby will be God. And you see, he didn't realize that the baby was not going to be God, that the baby was God. Amen. And you see, and so he wanted to kill that baby because that baby was more than just competition. That baby was more than just something that was going to happen. That baby was the king. That baby had the ability to curse him. That baby held the scepter that was going to rule the world. And that baby, no doubt, was God. And Herod became frightful and scared and said, I better kill this baby. See, that's why Herod wanted to get rid of this baby. Herod wanted to get rid of that baby because it had all the power of the universe. And there was nothing he could do about it other than try to kill him. And you see, he failed. He failed at that. And so we need to pray tonight and thank God for what he gave to us here during this time as we celebrate Christmas. We want to rejoice and be thankful for what God gave to us. What a gift that we celebrate during this time of year. A king that controlled the blessings or the cursing of people. A king that held the scepter, that all people would be obedient to him. A king that was not just Jesus, but he was Emmanuel, God with us.
That's right.
Praise the Lord for that.